All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another live video from the Florida Wildflower Foundation Symposium in Orlando at the UF IFAS Extension. We are here, so lucky to be here with our keynote speaker, Dr. Elisabeth Schussler. She is actually getting ready to fly back out to her home state, but right now we're lucky enough to have her talk about the topic of her keynote presentation today, which was, interestingly for me, plant blindness. Now, this is a disease that I know a lot of people personally who suffer from, and I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about this plant blindness disease, how you came about researching it, why it's important to know about, and eventually how we can cure people of it.
Right. So plant blindness is something that we all have to a certain extent, and that's kind of one thing to keep in mind. So we shouldn't be ashamed about our plant blindness. But the idea is that, and most people know this, that when we go out into the world, we're much more likely to see the animals in our lives than we are to see the plants in our lives. And this came about as an idea that Dr. Jim Wandersee and I came up with through conversation and bemoaning the lack of people not being able to see plants. And we really thought that it was because of the way that our brain works and the way that our eyes work in concert with our brain. And so the idea is that when you go out into the world, what we think we see is not actually what we in our brain attend to, and that's called visual attention. Is we get all of the information in our eyes, and then what our brain does is it filters. And what's happening is that we're actually filtering out the plants because they're not as noticeable to us shape-wise. They just kind of blend together in kind of a green background, and we discard them and we notice the plants in our lives. And so that's plant blindness. It's a visual attention problem.
A visual attention problem. So this is studied, it's documented. This is an actual problem. It sounds kind of silly to talk about plant blindness, but it's amazing to think that our brains actually do filter out the plants as we're walking around them. And when I say our, I guess I mean the collective our. I know that people who are here attending the symposium, people all around us in this beautiful garden, we tend to notice plants a little bit more. We don't necessarily have this plant blindness problem, and I personally feel lucky for that. But for the people in our lives that do suffer from plant blindness, can you tell us why is that a problem? Why should we even care about this sort of plant blindness issue?
That's a great question because, I mean, in some ways, right, people are like, well, this is just the way it is. We don't notice the plants. But when we think about, particularly in today's society, when we are losing so much of our habitat, when we're concerned about the loss of species, most people know that we are losing a lot of our mammal species on the planet. The reason we are is because of loss of habitat, because they don't have a place to live. And a lot of that is we focus on the animals, but we're not thinking about saving the habitat because of our plant blindness. And so it really goes back to the things that we value, the things that we notice, and then where we put our money, in essence. And so if we're not funding our habitats, then we can't save our animals as well. And so for those reasons, just because I guess I would say I'm a botanist, it's the right thing, is to be able to notice the plants around us. But I think on a larger scale, it really is, it's an environmental issue.
It's an environmental issue. And I noticed that you'd also mentioned that it's somewhat of a cultural issue too. Is that correct?
It is. And this is something that I think a lot of us are kind of aware of, is that even though plant blindness is something that happens in your brain, it is also something that can be shifted through education. And so what we find in studies, if you look in the literature, if you want to go to Google Scholar and Google plant blindness, it's always fun. You can look at all the research that's been done. What you'll find is that that plant blindness varies by different countries. It varies by individuals, of course, and it varies by certain cultures that value plants more highly than others. They are less plant blind than we are.
What are some of these countries, and how does the United States kind of rank in them? And while I give you a second to think about that, again, we're live and we have an airplane going over. We're near an airport. And speaking of flying, I just want to take a second while we have that going on to point out, if you happen to see, viewers at home, there are so many butterflies and pollinators flying all around this gorgeous pollinator garden that is filled with all kinds of native plants interspersed all throughout. There's actually there's a bee hotel a little further down. We have Gaillardia, blanket flower, those orange flowers down there. So I just wanted to take a second because those are actually flying all around us, and it may be hard for the viewer to see. So if you get a chance to come down to the IFAS Extension Center, definitely take a look in Orlando. It's beautiful. So also viewers, if you happen to like or love what you see or what you hear on this video, definitely press the like button, press the heart button, and if you have any questions for Dr. Elisabeth Schussler, definitely go ahead and put them in the comments box. We'll ask her your questions. We've got a few more minutes left. So where does the United States fall in this plant blindness ranking amongst other countries?
Yeah, it's kind of sad. The United States has a pretty high plant blindness relative to other countries. The studies that have been done often are done comparing Europe to the United States, and so that's probably the best comparisons. And people in Europe, people in Britain have a much I guess more robust gardening kind of culturally, and so they tend to be better at naming plants than American children are, and so unfortunately U.S. has fairly high plant blindness.
But you know what I find something like this Wildflower Symposium that we're at really is bringing in not only just regular plant enthusiasts, native plant enthusiasts, but younger plant enthusiasts. I see a lot of people in their 20s, 30s that are coming through here. They're students, they're wanting to spread the word of native plants and our ecology and how they're linked, and I find that very heartening. So what are some of the things that everyday people watching this live feed could do in their personal lives to help the people they know, their neighbors who suffer from plant blindness?
Right, and so first you have to recognize it, right? Of course, that's the start, and point it out to people, because I think it's important for them to understand that their lack of ability to name plants or to understand them is not really their fault, right? It's a cultural issue, it's a brain issue, and it's an education issue as well, and so we just don't do as great of a job. But what can we do? So one of the best ways that people learn about plants is actually by a plant mentor. A lot of people learn from their parents, and so if you know a lot about plants, then make it kind of your mission to help people to notice the plants, to help people to show them character traits. A lot of us can go out and identify, I'm not great at it, but we can go out and we can identify plants because we know what to look for, and we have to understand that other people don't know how to look at those traits, and so help them. It's just like identifying a bird. You have to know the trait to look for to be able to identify it, and so help them with that.
Right, I think that's great. And I'll tell you on a personal note, when I started to learn more about plants, it almost felt like I was learning a secret language that was in front of me all along. And now I take so much joy in the beauty surrounding me.
Yeah.
And the people that I love that are around me are starting to have that same joy.
Yeah.
And that's something that's kind of a positive way to look at it, I think. And it helps me and the people that I care about.
Yeah. We have to be cheerleaders for plants, and we have to help people to see them in the same way we do. And so we can't get too wrapped up in knowing how to identify them that we can't come back and help people and kind of scoop them up and bring them along with us.
Yes, and share that secret language.
Yes.
Make sure they're open, their eyes are open, and there's no more plant blindness.
Exactly.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And best of luck in the future, and hopefully we'll see you at another Wildflower Symposium in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, stay tuned. I'm going to pan out to this gorgeous pollinator garden filled with some native plants and native pollinators, and hope to see you for our next Facebook Live video coming up later this afternoon. Thanks.